Hey folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. It's Saturday, November the 15th, a snowy day here. And we've just seen what I most sincerely hope is the last chapter in the Eubank Benn feud. Back in April, we saw Chris Eubank Jr. prevail over Connor Benn in an absolute humdinger of a fight, an absolute brilliant fight that lived up to its hype. Well, you could say that this fight lived up to its hype as well, because there was very little hype. And the fight was a fundamentally disappointing fight. Having said that, and not wishing to take anything away from Connor Benn, who prevailed with ease in this fight, what we really saw was another victory for Father Time. It's a story as old as boxing. Somebody entering the ring who had the will to do something, but the body just wasn't responding. Chris Eubank Jr. is now, I would say, an old 36 against a still young 29-year-old Connor Benn. Connor Benn fought to a game plan, and he didn't allow his emotions to get the better of him. He boxed. And he boxed well, though, at the end when he was saying that Ryan Garcia and all the Americans can, line up and he'll take them all and twice on a Sunday, I put that down to a little bit of hubris. I don't think of Connor Benn as being world class. Could he sneak a world title at 154 or 147 possibly? Yeah, maybe. But it really was a case for me that Chris Eubank Jr. his timing was off, his movement was off, his reflexes were off, his power wasn't there. And even though he's the naturally bigger man, he was dominated from round 1 through to round 12, which of course round 12 was a 10-7, 2 knockdowns. Had there been another minute in the round, it would have been a stoppage. I'm absolutely certain of that. Had it been in the old money, a 15-round fight, we wouldn't have got past the 13th round. It's a little bit sad, really, and I'm not a massive Chris Eubank Jr. fan. I'm not a Connor Benn fan. I'm just mostly neutral. The better man won on the night, and that was absolutely certain. But again, we've seen this so many times, whether we think back into the 1970s, or I guess it was technically 1980s, Muhammad Ali entering the ring, a shadow of his former self. Roy Jones Jr. entering the ring, a shadow of his former self. Chris Eubank Jr. was a very pale, sad facsimile of, Chris Eubank Jr., a very pale, sad facsimile of the fighter he once was. Well beaten from round 1 through to round 12. The fight started with Connor Benn being the aggressor, the faster man, and I was thinking, well, maybe Chris Eubank is going to sort of let him have those first few rounds, and then it'll be, like golfers say, a game of 2 9s. The second half of the fight, Chris Eubank would begin to stamp his authority. But there was no stamping. In fact, there was no authority. This is, like I say, a story as old as boxing. And I want to repeat this, not taking anything at all away from Connor Benn. Connor Benn fought an intelligent fight. He didn't allow his emotions to get the better of him. He did a very professional job of work. But he was fighting a different man than he fought in April. The Chris Eubank Jr. of April was, still if you like, a prime fighter, a fringe world-class prime fighter. But tonight, absolutely not so. Now, while there may be some desire on the part of, I suppose, promoters and money people to see a trilogy because it is now 1-1, Connor Benn said this is the end of the road. This is the end of the generational grudge. Those aren't his exact words. I can't remember his exact words. Chris Eubank Jr. left the door slightly open, saying that, well, we'll have to see. I've got some problems I've got to sort out, alluding to, issues that he was been dealing with. But I think if somebody was to be really sort of honest and truthful with Chris Eubank Jr., they would say, this is the time now to hang up the gloves and move on with the rest of your life. I suppose, there will be people who will want Chris Eubank Jr. to continue. He might well want to continue himself. He might want to, right this wrong. He's now got 4 losses on his record. He might think that, one more roll of the dice, so he can, do something better, maybe compete at 168, but against whom, right? So I think this is time now for Chris Eubank Jr., who's had a good run, made lots of money. He probably has generational wealth, certainly, more money than many who leave the sport. This is the time to call it a day. He was comprehensively beaten. This isn't something that was close. This is, arguably he lost every round. Would you say it was like a 10-2, a 9-3? I don't know. I wasn't scoring it round by round. I just thought that Connor Benn dominated the fight. He was the faster man. He was pressing the action. He seemed to have more power. And like I say, if the bell hadn't rung it, to save Chris Eubank Jr., who was down twice in the 12th round, would, I'm absolutely certain, have been stopped. And so there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. It's not like it was a close fight, a nip and tuck, and, a lot of swing rounds, and you could say, he had a bad night and he could come back. It's not like he's 32, he's 36. And it defies logic to suggest that he could get better. And I think it's time. I would hope that Chris Eubank Jr. is surrounded by some people who are going to give him this objective, well-meaning advice, and that Chris Eubank Jr. now retires from boxing. As for Connor Benn, well, like I said earlier, talking about taking on top Americans at 154 or 147, it sort of sounds good in the euphoria of a really good win. And I'm sure there are fights to be made, but I would temper that by saying that, yes, you had a great win tonight, but against a shot fighter. And I don't think that's being too harsh. If he moves into the elite level at 147, 154, I suspect that he's not going to do overly well. However, he's 29 and he's still got years ahead of him. So, manage his expectations. Maybe he can sneak a world title in there somewhere. He can certainly make more money and he's got a few more years left. But I wouldn't be surprised if this has been Connor Benn's high watermark. Now, Connor Benn fans might say that I'm, talking nonsense here and that there's lots left for Connor Benn. And I hope so. I mean, I've certainly got nothing against the fellow. But I would say that this will, when everybody has retired, this will probably be Connor Benn's finest night. And I hope that Chris Eubank Jr. can reconcile within himself that this was his last hurrah and that he can only end up getting hurt and possibly hurt badly if he chooses to continue, regardless of whether he chooses to continue at 168 or campaigns again at 160. I think 160 is sort of out of the question, to be perfectly honest. But I just don't see Chris Eubank Jr. I don't see there being any upside for Chris Eubank Jr. to continue fighting. So there we go. There's my thoughts. I had predicted that Chris Eubank Jr. would win on points, though I did say in my discussion with Julian McGowan that maybe Connor Benn could master his emotions and do better. Well, he certainly did master his emotions, and he did a lot better. But I think it's fair to say, and this again isn't meaning to be disrespectful to Connor Benn, he did a lot better against a shadow of the man that he lost to in April. A story, like I say, as old as boxing. Thanks for watching. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and wherever you are in the world, have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.